on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We're talking about the Dems using people as the means to their political ends. That's just a feature of what they do. Everything in pursuit of political ambition, the ends justify the means, and that includes people and their interests, or even lives, as the means to ends, to be used as they see fit in pursuit of power. That also includes the D.C. Press Corps, which serves as their comm shop. You know, they put someone like a Margaret Brennan in the proper costume, doll her up, train her to talk in that serious news person voice. And we're supposed to think that she is a substantive person, very intelligent. She's probing, asking the difficult questions, holding those in power, their feet to the fire, as it were. But, of course, as we've seen, as anybody could take notice of if they've listened to what she said and spent any time assessing her program, I mean, it's, boy, she's really something. I mean, and it's the same thing for Welker at Meet the Press, same thing for Clinton Foundation Donor Zero at This Week. They are all as conflicted and beset by their own hypocrisy as Hakeem Jeffries or any of those pro-filibuster Democrats arguing against the continuing resolution. I mean, the parallels are really interesting. Margaret Brennan, who just a few weeks ago, incorrectly, to say the least, argued that the Third Reich was the product of a regime that weaponized free speech. Well, she did that to Marco Rubio, who had to correct her. Marco Rubio was on again, this time to talk about, in part, what's going on college campuses, and specifically the controversy generated by the left over the potential deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, the organizer and negotiator, in quotation marks, of the campus encampment, the pro-Hamas encampment at Columbia University last year. Rubio on again to have to deal with Margaret Brennan, suggesting that foreign nationals have absolute free speech rights in this country.
Is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down colleges.
I'm asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence or material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other. We don't want it. We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed them in the first place. If he had told us, I'm going over there, and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in. We never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it.
And just a bit of a flashback to substantiate what Marco Rubio was saying. Here is Mahmoud Khalil being interviewed at the time that the encampment was present, talking about what the pro-Hamas encampers would or would not agree to.
Are you guys going to listen to the university and leave the encampment here?
Of course not. The university is the one who should listen to us. They should listen to their student body, who are demanding to end their investment in the war that's happening in Palestine. Our demands are clear. Our demands are regarding the investment from the Israeli occupation, the companies that are profiting and contributing to the genocide of our people. Again, the university, once again, they are so stubborn in listening to their students. They're treating this matter as a disciplinary matter. They're not treating this as an anti-war movement that actually gathered thousands of students here. That actually sparked thousands of students across the United States.
How far are you all willing to go here on campus?
We're going to go as far as we need to pressure the university to pressure the university to divest from the occupation. This is up to the group, to the leadership of the group, to decide how far they will go. But now it's clear that the students will remain here. They will stay here until they achieve their demands.
Well, you're really confident. And I'm sick of people calling him a student. He's a 31-year-old man who has been here for 2 years. And, he's got a list of demands. Are you kidding me? He wants to destroy Western civilization. He hates Jewish Americans.
31-year-old men can be students. But that the point is that, in case Margaret Brennan is confused, that's the sort of thing that has put his green card in jeopardy, which is within the bounds of the law. Mm-hmm. Also, Griff Jenkins reporting for Fox News, obtaining video of a Columbia protester student who is a national from India self-deporting to Canada using the CBP Go app. That DHS sources confirm that her F-1V visa has been revoked. Bye-bye. For more on this, pleased to be joined by Professor William Jacobson, clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, president of Legal Insurrection Foundation, as well as the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me back.
Well, we're continuing to pound away. I think you share the view that Marco Rubio articulated, that this is not a free speech case, but the D.C. press corps and Senate Judiciary Democrats and, the entirety of the left infrastructure really doing their best to make Mahmoud Khalil a cause célèbre. I don't think that is going to work out to their benefit, but this is what they're committed to.
Yes, and we don't know all of the evidence against him. When they picked him up and they issued I forget what is called, an order of detention or something like that, or notice of detention, they cited one general provision in the law where the Secretary of State can determine that somebody is presence here is damaging to U.S. Foreign policy. And from that, because they only cited that general provision, all of the press and all of the anti-Israel groups and all of these people are saying, oh, they've got nothing on him, that's it, that's just free speech. But, it is a provision of law that gives the Secretary of State that power. And we do know that he's been affiliated with, and as you point out, a spokesman for a group that has endorsed terrorism. That's another ground to deport him right there. So he has free speech, but it's subject to the immigration laws. And when you're here on a visa or you're here on a green card, your rights are limited by the immigration laws. So things that he may or may not have done, if he were an American citizen, may not be criminal, but as somebody who's here by permission may violate the immigration laws, or at least give the immigration authorities grounds to remove him. So I think this is all premature. I think they're trying to make him into some sort of hero. But we know from what's public about him that he, was the leader or a leader of a group that imposed a reign of terror on Columbia University.
Yeah, but what about, why haven't they charged him with a felony if he was the ringleader who promoted people to damage buildings to the tune of $400 million, they're saying? Why hasn't he been charged with that? Destruction of property or something.
Yeah, that's a good question. Why none of the people who organized the protest, be they at Columbia or elsewhere, who engaged in a criminal conspiracy, have not been criminally charged? That's a really good question. It's not either or. They may have decided that it's easier just to get him out of the country. But, in these cases, sometimes it's both. You can criminally charge somebody. So, yeah, I think it's a wonder why these things have never been looked into. And I'm not talking about organizing, a protest where people carry signs. But there were serious violations of the law, and there were serious violations of the civil rights laws by the way they did this. If this had been done by a Klan group on a campus or any place else, you better believe the FBI would have been all over them, and you'd have a lot of criminal prosecutions. But because it's quote-unquote pro-Palestinian, they get a pass on it, apparently.
The president of El Salvador, Bukele, posting on X today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization Tren de Aragua arrived in our country, and they were transferred to the counterterrorism confinement center in El Salvador. That's not going to be a pleasant experience for them from the videos I've seen. But a federal judge attempted to intervene, another federal district court judge attempting to intervene here and force the Trump administration to call back those flights of people being deported. And apparently there's a deal with El Salvador to imprison some of these people that are threats to the public safety, the priority of the administration. What's your take on this federal district court judge and his attempt to interfere with Trump when it comes to immigration policy, and just generally what the federal courts are doing and what the left is doing here, forum shopping to get federal district court judges here and there to stop the termination, the RIF of probationary employees, to stop deportations, to stop just about everything that Trump is trying to do?
Yeah, well, I've been, talking about this, and I know on your show also, ever since the start of the administration, there has been a fierce campaign of lawfare launched against the administration, pre-planned. New York Times had a report last November how they had lined up 800 attorneys at over 40 different organizations to contest every single thing the Trump administration does. And that's what they've been doing. And unfortunately, the federal judiciary, I believe, has gone beyond its boundaries under separation of powers and has halted actions and has opined on actions that really come down to policy that's reserved for the executive branch. And so, yeah, this has been a major problem, and now we're seeing it in the immigration sphere, where Trump is trying to get these TDA gang members out of the country. He issued a proclamation under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, declaring that organization to be a de facto criminal state, which allows him to then deport them really summarily. And so the judge basically said, hold on a second, this is an act that's normally only used during wartime. I need some time to figure this out. And so the judge put a temporary restraining order on deporting people under that act. Now, if you're a gang member and there's another provision of the law that allows you to be deported, that can go forward, but only under this Alien Enemies Act. If that's the only basis for the government to remove you, he said, hold on for 2 weeks while people brief it and, I figure out what this thing is and how it works here. But he ordered, according to reports, he verbally ordered the government to turn around airplanes with these criminals that were in the air heading to El Salvador. And apparently they didn't, or at least some of the planes didn't. That's a very risky move, ordering an airplane to turn around. How about checking with the air traffic controllers first? Okay. So that was really interesting. Well, the planes landed anyway, and Bukele, if that's how it's pronounced, tweeted on X, oopsie, too late, because they already arrived. And so what this Alien Enemies Act does, it gives the president the power to remove nationals of a foreign enemy or a foreign state that is either declared war or has engaged in incursions into the United States. And so will the courts get to decide that? Is that the so-called political question doctrine that's not for the courts? There's going to be some super interesting things, but this is a really broad power the president would have if it's upheld.
Well, right. But I mean, as you know, the chief executive has essentially plenary power over immigration policy. And so, I mean, these federal district court judges that are offering that are interceding in areas, as you just mentioned, sort of where they're overreaching into powers that belong to the executive and the executive branch, trying to halt everything, having to be overturned by appellate courts like just happened with some of Trump's DEI proclamations. I mean, I'm fine. Things work through the court system and it takes more time than you want. I'm fine to a point where it is just obvious they are exceeding their authority. And at some point, unfortunately, it didn't happen last week, as Alito argued in the dissent on TRO. At some point, the Supreme Court is going to have to step in, it seems to me, and wrap some of these federal judges or the entire federal district court system on the knuckles to say, stay in your lane, don't exceed your authority.
Well, that's going to have to happen. I mean, there is a concept that, the federal courts have to have legitimacy and their orders have to be respected. But if you're going to veer into things of war, okay, I mean, the government has sought a stay in the D.C. Circuit Court, and it's supposed to be briefed. I think the briefing, it's on a fast track, will be completed by Wednesday to stay this judge's order on the Aliens Act. And in that, they say, if this judge can do this, can he also issue an injunction halting drone strikes? What else can he do as it comes to national security? And that's the point, that there are certain judges are not all powerful. There are limitations to their authority. And when you order that the government can't do things that the executive branch deems necessary for national security, where is the boundary? Where does the judge start making? Is the judge now the commander in chief? And that's a question the Supreme Court needs to grapple with, and the courts need to grapple with, because otherwise these courts, we didn't have it with the planes turning around, but it came pretty close. A lot of people are claiming Trump defied the judge's order. Trump saying, no, I didn't. They were already in international airspace. But the question is, at what point do people say this is ridiculous? These judges are going to get people killed.
Professor William Jacobson, clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell, founder of LegalInsurrection.com and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, as well as the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Welcome back to Ask Hasselus. I'm Weston. What's your question?
How can I find true happiness?
That's a deep, philosophical question that has plagued man for centuries.
Do you know the